Some people are lured off the street into the Sony system with promises that they have cheap lenses with the same specs. Look at these Tamrons. Look at this Tamron zoom. Much better than your G Master. Look how much cheaper it is. It's just as good. So sharp in the corners. Look at that. The lies you've been fed, you rat on a wheel.
All I want is the perfect camera. All I want is the perfect camera.
Once Canon announced that they would drop nuclear bombs on any camera company who tried to make autofocus lenses for their RF mount, even though nuclear bombs are fake, they were afraid. Now you can't have an article or a YouTube video without comments just full of people saying, Canon, I'll never buy Canon. They don't have third-party lenses. I'm boycotting them. You're boycott like you're doing a good thing. Go boycott a fast food restaurant, you piece of shit. Canon RF glasses basically like third-party lenses. They're so cheap. Those budget ones. So like you're getting that option. Or you have way too expensive ones. Sure, there's no balance in the system, but I just hate third-party lenses so much because there's bad things that happen on the cameras. If you have Sony Active Stab and you use a third-party lens, it does not work right. I don't know why. It makes no sense whatsoever, but every lens I tried that was third-party, like a Laowa or a Nisi, nothing worked. Nisi's popular, trust me. That Tamron 17-28 was so much shakier than Sony's 20mm. It was like, what's going on here? Sure, the autofocus can keep up, but like I found the Samyang was hunting the 18mm 2.8. It was actually losing me in a Sony system. I was like, what? That would never happen on a Sony native lens. Companies are coming out with more features that are dependent on their native lens, like focus breathing in Sony and Canon now. You can't use these on third parties, and those are just the glaring, obvious features that ruin your life. The shaky footage, the out of focus hunting. When it comes to actual, like the look of the lens, this is also a downside. Often you're getting like different colors than the camera manufacturer designed. You get Canon color science, and then you put a Tamron lens on, and you're like, green hues. Samyang green? Disgusting. So it changes your color. And then 3D pop, you lack it. Notice the dimensionality. When you take a picture without a 3D pop capable lens, you deny your audience an experience that they will remember. They get a flat render. It's just like, what happened to me? They leave disappointed more than most of my girlfriends ever have. For example, in this disgusting shot, I went out for a hike with my buddies, mistakenly. I didn't realize my friend was gonna bring a Tamron zoom. And he took all these photos and I got them back. I was like, wow, that's a nice, wait, where? It looks like a flat dimension. I barely see that he's further away from these tree stumps. How come the background looks like it's all one flat image? There's no pop on, how come there's no pop? I'm not brought into the image. So like I was hurt. My feelings, Geet Collective. Another disappointing shot for the roster. Is that what your portfolio's built of? Geet took another disappointing shot. A bee was struggling to survive, but we can't tell which twig he was leaning on. Did he want to go further away from us or closer to us? I would be able to detect if I was on like a Sony Prime or something. Give me a Zeiss 55mm or something like that. But this one is like he's stuck between two worlds, yet they're the same world. And that's what really hurts. In this photo, we not only see the Sony color science, but also my friend's mistake of buying an Olympus camera. It's an OM1, and he didn't realize it was a sushi company, and he put all his money into it, and every shot he gets is more blurrier than the last. Thankfully, he had my Leica 50-200 on it, so maybe some of his shots wouldn't be thrown out immediately, but as we can see in this picture, Tamron disgusts us all. In this photo of a confused videographer not understanding his tools, he furrows his brow trying to complicate the menu system and why isn't the linear focus turning on. He couldn't understand what was happening. He just bought the new Leica Prime. It was so expensive. Unfortunately, the Tamron didn't render the image properly. He couldn't tell the difference between his arm and the camera. There was no 3D dimensionality. The fugly Tony balls in the background were only part of the problem. Here's a bee that turned around suddenly, realizing he was being filmed on a Tamron lens. He was like, God. So he immediately flew off to get better, sweeter honey from a flower. He had to find a very special elven flower to get the taste out of his mouth from the sour Tamron lens. Here's another confused and angry photographer, acne-ridden in his abilities, and he doesn't realize that it's him that is the problem. The camera works just fine, it's just he doesn't understand what to do with it. Canon would have hidden his acne, but Sony discovered it, rediscovered it, and enhanced it. The redness. Sony's evil, and you put a Tamron lens on that. It's too sharp. Now, obviously, I'm being silly. These shots are pretty fantastic. They still have the full frame look. It's like, not bad. Would it have blown you away with like a Zeiss Prime or something? You'd be like, holy cow. Like, you're still gonna get some shots for your Facebook page that your grandmother shops on. It's not bad, but for us with distinguished tastes, we like something just a little more fine wine. As my friend contemplated a terrible purchasing decision, going with Olympus instead of Fuji, he realized that he was lost in a forest, although we couldn't find him because we couldn't see how far away he was from the actual image plane. He wasn't 3D popping out of the trees like we needed him to, so he's still in the woods to this day. In this shot, I realized for the first time that cameras can take photographs. I heard a clicky sound. I thought his camera was broken. I asked him, what is he doing? He said he's taking a picture. I was like, what is that? I looked down at my mode dial and saw that there were more dials that leaded you away from video settings, and that confused me. But I learned a lot that day, even though we're in a 2D chess match that none of us won. In this shot, a random kid walked by wondering where his family was, and he realized he had been abandoned in a dewy meadow, and he wondered what his next meal might be, if he could eat a chipmunk or a squirrel. Due to the Tamron lens not rendering his position correctly, the family never did find the boy, and he now lives in a circus. As a side experiment, I'm going to stop down to 2.5. Sharpness increase? I don't mind it. That's what you can do on a native lens. You may think you're saving money by getting this third-party option, but like, take example the Sigma 150 to 600, I think, and there's a Tamron 150 to 500. Those telephoto lenses have stave built in, but you cannot separate IBIS and lens stave, so they fight against each other. It's the most jittery thing you ever seen for video. See, that's why people are happy with third-party lenses, because they often work fine for photography, but when you're doing video, it's like all of a sudden your stave doesn't work, the continuous autofocus is not right, your focus breathing not activated, 3D pop lacking. There's so many things going against third-party, it ain't worth the money, you're losing money. In this shot, a tiny Micro Four Loser camera is held by weathered hands in a full-frame NV-like fashion. The phase detect pixels falling off with each button press. Sony hand-toned color science is also disappointing. In this shot, the videographer knew he was being filmed, so he tried to smile, but the sadness in his eyes revealed the real truth. He didn't know what he was doing, and he regretted the purchase immediately of the GH6, but he's grown to love it now. Despite the 2D rendering making the trees in the background look like they're in front of me, I don't mind the shot. It's beautifully rule of thirds written. If you remember that shot I got of the scooter guy in the forest, 4K 120p, I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm following him with manual focus. This was the behind-the-scenes footage. Little did I realize I was being taken as a moment in time. And that, wow, I'm wowed. Sure, I would have been more wowed if it was a Zeiss Prime, but he didn't have one. He didn't ask to borrow mine. He should have. Obviously, third-party lenses are more than good enough for all of us. I'm just being nitpicky here. But there are things to pay attention to, like we've mentioned. Autofocus not working right, stabilization iffy, fun features, and future things to come that we don't even know about will only work on native lenses. Stuff like that. And then uncompatibility and the colors and the pop lacking. There's many reasons to choose a native Prime or a Zeiss or Leica, even better. Even though those are third party, I guess it's more of a Tamron Samyang thing. They just discuss themselves, and Sigma. got no pop. So my buddy Geet, he managed to squeeze some honey nectar from a sour lemon in this Tamron lens. He knew what he was doing, and therefore he could squeeze out some actual essence. It is more about the photographer than the gear. That's where we were standing when I was filming that 300 frames per second. It's a glorious shot, I must say. I like the blue sky and then the yellowing leaves of the trees and then us there ruining the shot. So go subscribe to Geek Collective. Maybe he'll make money off it somehow and buy a better prime lens. But I think he's working on aspiring to get a Samyang zoom or something. Frickin' 50 to 75, 2.8 to 4.6. It's a bullshit lens. $700. Oh man, you got ripped off. So in my opinion, don't be afraid to buy into Canon because they're not allowing third-party lenses right now to have autofocus. I mean, who cares? Their budget primes are like cheaper than these third-party lenses anyway. They're bullshit lenses, but whatever. You're fine with this level of quality. You're looking at third-party, might as well look at budget Canon. So Sony E-mount is not an advantage because of so many different choices. I like a couple choices. I hate when I see like, okay, there's laptops. All right, there's 500 different ones. Okay, I'll just narrow that down in a couple afternoons of hard research. There should be 3 companies max for each product. It's like 1, 2, or 3. Make things easier. Stop giving me so many options and they all suck and they all break instantly. Get your shit together, world. After you buy a Camera Conspiracies t-shirt, your world will be good. It'll be worse. It'll be worse. Subscribe, though.